Hello, clan fans! Welcome back. Episode 4 premiered last night, and oh, it's a lot. We are ramping up this season officially with a lot of drama coming up, and we really need to discuss a few things that happened in this past episode. Without further ado, let us talk about episode 4, titled Muskets, Liberty, and Saurkraut. The episode begins with Jamie actually giving Brianna and Roger some of the French gold, telling him that he has changed his mind about them going to get some muskets because he now is going to try to form a militia, and he has no at all interest in joining Cleveland's band, which, thank God, because that dude is a psychopath waiting to happen. Fergus and Marsley are back. We haven't seen them since episode 1, and Brianna and Roger are visiting this time, and they've actually brought some sauerkraut, which, hence the title. And it turns out it's mostly just a cover for what was really brought there, which is whiskey from Jamie's distillery, and as well as the French gold. And Roger asks if they can hide the French gold at their home, and they agree to it. I unfortunately feel like this is going to be some really bad foreshadowing somewhere. We'll cross that bridge when we do. He explains to Fergus and Marsley that the French gold is actually for Francis Marion, who is a colonel in the Continental Camp that is right outside of, interestingly, Lord John's estate. Basically, Marion is known to actually arm backcountry patriots, so they're hoping that they can get the muskets from him, but there are going to be some issues that arise from that later on in the episode, and we will see that, or we'll discuss it at the end. One thing I was confused about, this is just me maybe not understanding where the story's at. I thought Fergus and Marsley were in Philadelphia, but Lord John's estate is in Savannah. Those are very different parts of the East Coast, so I don't know. Unless I totally misunderstood this, I swore they were in Philadelphia. Maybe they're near Savannah. But yeah, it just doesn't make sense to me, because they visit them first and then they go to Georgia, so did they travel that far? It's confusing. If anybody wants to explain it to me in the comments, please nicely do, because that part kind of threw me off a little bit. And while Fergus is toasting to the return of Brianna and Roger, he also mentions to them that he has received word from Lord John about Percival Beauchamp. And that was what we saw in the last episode, that Percival wanted to get in contact with Fergus, and he knows him by his original name, Claudel. And also, I want to just point this out, Perseverance is his name, but also Percival and Percy. Their names were very interesting back then. But anyway, he explains that he's trying to get in contact with him, and he doesn't know if he wants to do that or not. And Brianna also acknowledges, oh, Beauchamp, that's actually Claire's first name, or first and maiden name. Let's clarify that. But yeah, it's interesting that she actually brought that up. Unfortunately, we don't get much into that, because all of a sudden, a rock is thrown through the window nearly at Brianna's head, and we don't really know who's attacking other than just people who are upset with the news. And as Marsley points out, basically the printer gets blamed with whatever news is put in the paper if it's not satisfactory to them. But I think there might be more to it than that. As we learned in the first episode, Fergus is actually printing seditious papers, which most likely will get him in trouble eventually. I don't know for sure what will cause what happens later on in the season. I don't want to get into details about it because I don't want it to be true. But I know when that episode comes, we will have to discuss it. And I'm not looking forward to that, to be honest. But like I said, a bridge we will cross when we get there. Meanwhile, while that is happening, Jamie is going to visit the residents of the Ridge, and he is finding out that they are unfortunately mostly loyal to the crown, and even if they aren't, they are afraid to get involved. So the only people that he can truly rely on are the men from Ardsmuir, and just a handful of others. So he decides he needs to go venture out to other counties and find other men. So he, Ian, and Josiah actually go out and start recruiting men. And while they're doing that, interestingly, Ian comes over to Jamie and tells him that there is a man who he was speaking with who actually happens to know Brianna and Roger, and he was heading to the ridge himself. So one will immediately assume most likely Rob Cameron, especially because they showed him in the previous clips. And I myself wondered, oh, wait, is this actually how they're going to bring him back? So interestingly, it's not that disappointing. I was surprised at the direction it went in. So they go to approach the man, and it turns out it is actually Buck Mackenzie. He has come back to that time, and he actually has Roger's book that Rob Cameron had stolen, and he tells Jamie that Rob Cameron will not be a threat to them anymore. And I'm like, wait, what? We just skipped that? I thought we were going to actually, see what happens to Rob Cameron. Maybe we still will. I don't know. I'm not sure how that's going to happen, but anyway, Buck's back. Yay. And he actually gets to meet Jamie and Ian for the first time. And I loved Jamie saying, you remind me so much of your father. I know it could be a backhanded compliment, but I think he meant it hopefully in a positive way in this respect, because Buck is proving to be a better person than his father at this point. So I think he meant it in a good way. So while Jamie is away, Claire is basically home alone. Not alone. She has Fanny, but she's basically the adult of the house. And I think Mandy and Jenny were actually staying with Lizzie, which is later confirmed in the episode. So they're not with them at that point. But anyway, she and Fanny are basically by themselves in the house, and there's just kind of an eeriness to it while there's a windstorm outside. And Fanny says she feels like the house is alive, and asks Claire do you think that would be possible? And Claire basically explains she feels like houses can be alive in a way, especially once people have lived in them for a while. It's a part of them is still there even when they're gone. It's not quite the idea of ghosts, but maybe more so the idea of the energy that somebody puts into the home. And it was just kind of an interesting conversation that they had. And at one point Fanny says she wishes that Jane would haunt her because she really misses her. And then Claire starts asking her questions about what she and her family were like, and Fanny unfortunately doesn't know a whole lot of details, but she has some facts that Jane had told her. One of the interesting things that Fanny mentions is that Jane spoke a little bit of French, and I think that kind of strikes a chord with Claire because in France, that's where she lost faith. So it seems like it's another possible connection to Fanny and Jane's mother actually being Claire and Jamie's faith. But we don't get much more confirmation because guess who shows up? So Claire happens to see Mrs. Cunningham walking right up to the house, and I just love the part where she says, "And your little dog too." Just a little continuation from Mandy's comments about Mrs. Cunningham being the Wicked Witch of the West, and I just thought it was so funny. I just always love Claire's references to the future. It's a nice touch that they don't always have in the show, but I feel like they're doing it a little more last season and this season, which is nice. So Mrs. Cunningham is there because she has actually hurt her shoulder after she's fallen, and I never enjoy seeing that, but they show that her shoulder truly is badly dislocated. So Claire actually performs the procedure that she had performed on Jamie back in season 1 when he had dislocated his shoulder. And she's able to do it, and Mrs. Cunningham is actually really impressed. But of course she knew it was a good idea to go to Claire in the first place. She then has an interaction with Fanny, and Fanny's very bold about her past, and she talks about being from a brothel, having heard people curse the way that Elspeth just did. And it's interesting because Elspeth does not seem too bothered by what Fanny's telling her. As she explains to Claire later, she was married to a sailor. I don't entirely know if that was a joke, because obviously the idea of a sailor's mouth, that's where like a lot of cursing comes from. But there might be truth to it. And basically Claire and Mrs. Cunningham are having like a bonding moment here, which is, it's interesting to see them connecting. Claire actually makes sure that Elspeth does not go too far, and she has her stay the night. However, in the morning, after they've had another lovely chat, Mr. Cunningham shows up, and he is very much starting to give off creep vibes. And it's like the second the villain is revealed, like that's all you see. And he basically invites himself into the house as he's picking his mother up. And we finally get a scene with the two of them in the same room. But he's just being like really strange towards Claire, like telling her, like he wanted to speak to Jamie about him joining his militia. And he's like asking where he is. So she tells him like, oh, he's just like off doing something, off on business. And he says, oh, must be like there must be an emptiness being in this house all by yourself. Like, it's so creepy and threatening the way that he says it. And even Elspeth like looks like, what did you just say to her? So yeah, something's just very off about Cunningham, and I hope he's not going to do something to Claire. He doesn't in this episode, and Claire is able to get him out of her house with a simple stare and telling him, oh, Jamie will be back any moment now. You better get your out of here. Basically what she says with her eyes. And yeah, he leaves. That's all there is to that in this episode, but I'm concerned about the next episode, where we get a preview of Cunningham being a little more threatening, especially towards Jamie. So we're going to have to see where that goes in episode 5. Fergus actually has quite a bit of subplot in this episode where he learns that he is actually not an illegitimate child like he had thought. Now, it's a long, complicated, twisted story that we learn about in this one scene. So he goes to meet with Percy, and Percy explains that when he married into a French family, he actually learned about this connection that his would-have-been sister-in-law actually had with Le Comte Saint-Germain. Remember him? Remember him? So apparently Saint-Germain had a connection with Amélie Beauchamp, and they did actually have an affair. They left her home, and he apparently sold her into a brothel. We learned that it wasn't just that she left, but she actually technically got kidnapped, and he sold her into the brothel. And it was actually where she ended up giving birth to Fergus. And this is really quite the revelation, because Fergus thought he was an illegitimate child all his life, which one would think that was the case just from hearing that story. But Percy actually reveals that there was a marriage certificate hidden in a Bible, which seems very convenient to me. I suppose there's a legitimacy to his claims, but I don't know if he would be making this up in any way. But anyway, yes, he finds the marriage certificate, which shows that Amélie actually had Saint-Germain marry her before she took him to her bed. So that does make Fergus legitimate. And it was actually interesting later on when he's talking to Marsley, he's telling her that he actually did know Amélie, but not as his mother. And she apparently detested children, but especially him. And now he understands why she must have, like, hated him, because he was the son of a man who basically ruined her and ruined her life. And it's just interesting how we went from the scene of Fergus learning about this to learning about, like, his point of view from this story. And it's really it's a sad story for Fergus, because even though it's good news in a way, it's also still not good news, because Saint-Germain was a piece of shit. As you recall from season 2. And yeah, it's interesting because the reason why Percy brought this up is because there is a piece of land that the French want in the colonies, and the only way to get it is if there is an heir to Saint-Germain, because Saint-Germain has some claim to this land. It's a little confusing. I probably would have to watch it again to fully understand it, but it's basically because Fergus is the heir, he could have claim to this land, and then he could sell it to the French so they could have it. But Fergus is not so sure he wants the French to have it because they're already fighting off the British from this land, so why would they want to trade one monarch for another? So that's where Fergus stands. He's trying to lean more towards being a patriot. Unfortunately, it might eventually cause problems in the future, and it's hard to say which thing will lead up to a certain thing, but we are going to learn, unfortunately, very soon. But honestly, I thought that scene was really well done, especially between Fergus and Marsley, and her just hearing him out and being comforting and understanding. And I love that it never really bothered her that he was illegitimate, and that's why she basically ran off with him originally, because her mother probably did not approve of him, but as we know. Anyway, I just loved how she just is so understanding of her husband, and she's there to stand by him, and that also might be a little foreshadowing, I don't know. But I just love that there's such honesty between them, and I wish we had gotten to see that more throughout the show. We saw some here and there, and especially in season 6, we got to see how they handled situations. It was kind of a bad time for them, so I liked getting the scene where it was just them talking and her listening and him expressing his feelings over a situation that he has just gotten clarity on. To just quickly wrap up Jamie and Claire's part in this episode, Jamie returns with Buck to the Ridge, and Jemmy and Mandy get to reunite with him, which is so sweet. And Claire officially gets to meet him for the first time as well. We don't know what his purpose is going to be in the rest of the season. Maybe he's going to fight in the war, and maybe that will lead to his death. We're not entirely sure what is going to happen with this character, basically. But also, while that is happening, Rachel has read in a newspaper that a place called Shadow Lake, which is where Ian's first wife, Emily, and their child were living. There was a horrible attack during a battle, and there was a massacre. Many Native Americans perished and were scalped. And Ian does not know if Emily and his son are amongst the victims. So he decides he needs to go and find out. And Rachel, she offers to go with him, and they're going to bring their son Augie with them. And Rachel admits to Claire, like, she wants to go with Ian mostly because she hopes Emily and their son are okay, but she also doesn't want Ian to forget about his life with her. And I thought that was really sad and sweet at the same time, but I think there's a part of her that worries he might still have feelings for Emily, which I don't think that is a plot at all in the books. I'm not positive. I think, from what I recall, Ian and Emily's son might end up living with them, because I'm guessing something might have happened to Emily, but I'm not positive if that is exact from the book or not. But yes, they are leaving the Ridge for a while to go up north, and Jamie actually says a really lovely prayer right before they head off. I can't talk tonight. Last part of the episode I want to talk about is Brianna going to Lord John's estate. So she does arrive there, and she arrives by herself because Roger's going to go to the Continental Army. And she tells Lord John, like, her husband's off, like, running errands. So she can't tell him which errands they are. And she does meet William again, and he's surprised to see her. Lord John actually hadn't told him that Brianna was going to visit. And then she also meets Amaranthus and her child. And Amaranthus is immediately jealous. You can obviously tell. And I thought maybe once she got confirmation that Brianna was married, because you could tell she was jealous of Brianna because of a potential closeness with William. But yeah, she doesn't seem satisfied with the idea that Brianna's married. She thinks that they have a past. So we'll get to that in a minute. But William and Brianna have a really lovely moment, like catching up. And William asks if she knew that he was her brother. And she tells him, like, yes, I knew the day that we met in Wilmington. And she really wanted to tell him. She wanted him to meet Roger and her kids, but it was just not her place to tell him, she admits. And I agree, and honestly, William needs to extend that to Ian, because he got mad at him for not telling him last season. And that was really unfair because it really wasn't Ian's place. It was really if Jamie was going to do it or if Lord John was going to do it. So I'm hoping that moment will lead to William reconciling with Ian eventually, because he really does owe him that apology. But Brianna does apologize for not telling him anyway, and he does accept her apology. And I think this is going to lead to a good moment between them where she helps him to understand Jamie and why he did what he had to do. Because Brianna went through a similar situation, and Lord John admits this to her later, that she is there not just to paint a portrait of Lady Grey, but also because he knows she went through the same thing, learning that Jamie was her father, literally the same situation. And he's hoping that she will help him become less lost in his identity and just help him get over what he's going through. And I think a lot of people were hoping that that would be the case, and it makes sense because yes, she went through that, and she has grown so much ever since she has gotten to the 18th century and met Jamie. She had a rough time in season 4 dealing with the fact that she was meeting her real father, but also didn't want to replace Frank, who she knew as a father her whole life. So that's a similar situation for William that I'm hoping she'll be able to help him work through. But yes, when William goes to talk to Amaranthus later, she admits that she is jealous because she thinks that he and Brianna had a history, and he admits technically yes, but not because they were a couple, but because she's his sister. And he explains to her his entire history, which I thought was very bold of him, considering he hasn't known her very long, especially. But she actually does hear him out, and he tells her, I wish I could renounce my title. And she comes up with this a little too quick, in my opinion. I'm a little suspicious of it, and I think other people are too. She immediately suggests, well, if we were to marry, you could give that title to our firstborn. And I'm like, huh. The way she says it so quickly, that's kind of what set the red flag off in my head. However, she is nicer to him, continuing, and he says, thank you for being understanding, and she's like, well, as somebody who was the daughter of somebody who wasn't of the highest profession or title, she understands. So it's hard to tell if she's being sincere or not, but I do get the feeling that there is a red flag here. Because even if that is the case, even if she understands his situation, she might be doing what she's doing because she was in that situation, and she's trying to work her way up, or she's still possibly a spy. We're not sure on that yet, because we seem to have lost the idea that Ben was still alive at this point. But maybe they'll bring that topic back into play in the next episode. We'll have to see. And the last scene of the episode is Roger arriving at the Continental Army, and he arrives there at a really bad time. So Colonel Marion is not in a good mood, basically. And he explains the situation that they need muskets for their home because they are trying to form a militia, and he hands him a letter that Jamie has written. And unfortunately, Jamie's name is not in a good place at this point because he abandoned his men at Mountmouth, I think is what it was called. And that's basically where Claire got shot, and he renounced his position because they were not doing anything to take care of her. And I honestly didn't like how this man was like calling Jamie a traitor because he tended to his wife. It's like, wow, sir, I see where your heart lies. Like, it's one thing to abandon your men, but he had a reason to. He was tending to his wife who had been shot because the men decided to go astray and shoot at each other. So, yeah, I think that was fair. Maybe Jamie didn't handle it in the way he should have, but it was a really dire situation. Claire could have died. So he's supposed to let her die? Men thought so off back then, and people in general. And unfortunately, still do in some cases today. But anyway, because Jamie's name is basically labeled as a traitor, and he's lucky he didn't get executed for what he did, he doesn't want to give them any muskets, and he says even if he could or wanted to, they don't have enough for them in general because they are about to fight a battle, and unfortunately it is the town of Savannah where Brianna is, not great. And Roger, of course, better news, is not allowed to leave because they're about to attack and they don't want to risk anything. And Roger can't even go warn Brianna about this, is what sucks. So yeah, great situation that he has ended up in. And the option that Roger has is he can just sit it out in the camp, or he can fight with them. So Roger actually thinks about it and he decides to fight with them, not with a musket, but with a sword. So we will see how that will play out as well in the next episode. Not looking great for anybody at this point. But that is the show. We have the drama, and we enjoy the drama. But yes, definitely a lot happened in this episode, and one thing I also forgot to mention, Jamie also tells Ian about the battle that is coming to King's Mountain, and he doesn't mention about the part where he most likely will die, but I think he doesn't want Ian to worry about that on top of worrying about Emily and his son. But Ian does tell him like he will try to be back so he can fight with him. So we will see how that also plays out. I know nothing at this point about King's Mountain in terms of the book. So yeah, I think at this point also some of this is going to go into show invention because the show is supposed to stray from the final book, and we really don't know what's going to happen at this point, which is nerve-wracking. But hey, one episode at a time, like we said. So yes, that was episode 4. Now that was a lot to go through. I apologize if this video is way too long. I tried to keep it as short as I could, but there was just a lot to get out there and a lot to talk about. But I will say I am looking forward to episode 5, if not a little nervous about episode 5. But I don't know when we're gonna get to see Fergus and Marsley's upcoming plot come to its climax. I don't quite know when that's going to happen. I have looked at the titles and I'm trying to determine when it most likely will happen. But most likely I'm going to say episode 6 or 7 maybe. I'm not looking forward to it. And book readers, you know why. But yes, not going to worry about it right now. I was just happy that they had that lovely scene together in this episode. I also loved Brianna and William having that scene together, and I think they're going to have more bonding time in the next episode because Lord John has asked Brianna to help William get through what he's going through. So I'm really looking forward to that. I don't know if William is ever going to learn about the time traveling thing. I'm guessing they're not going to tell him, but it would be interesting if Brianna mentioned it. We'll see. Before we go, I wanted to give an update on my costume. So it's pretty much done. Got the cuffs, got the closure, which I do need to alter a little bit in general. In general, I need to alter the bottom because there's a bit of a gap. I made it a little too short. That was my miscalculation, but I think there is a possibility I can fix it. And if not, I will get creative with it, because that is what we costumers do. But overall, I am happy with it. Just on the mannequin, it is a really close version of Brianna's costume from season 5, and it makes me so happy that I was able to accomplish that much. And I'm hoping to do photos once I fix it up, and I can't wait to share those as well. And I'm hoping to do a little more art before the season is over, if I have time and sanity. We will see. Tell me what you guys thought of episode 4. What do you guys think is going to happen in episode 5? And I will see you next week. And please enjoy your week. Have a lovely, well, I'm probably going to mention it next week. Have a lovely Easter if you celebrate early. Yes, have a good week, and I will see you soon, everyone. Bye!